Hiya, and welcome to the video for Paper 2, the comparison of literary text and non-fiction. This video focuses entirely on tasks 3 and 4, which is the analysis of non-fiction. So in the old specification, you previously got like 3 or 4 bullet points that helped you break down exactly the kind of things you should be looking for. So it's things like words and phrases, language for effect, sentence structuring and punctuation, and the lively style. Even though you are no longer going to get these bullet points, you can still kind of use them to structure your response. So the exam will look a little something like this. I'm not going to waste loads of time reading through it because I'm sure you don't want to listen to my annoying whiny voice, but basically you'll get something along the lines of tasks 3 and 4. You have 24 minutes in which to read and respond to the 2 tasks based on the newspaper article, the onesie craze, cool clothing or fashion failure. It won't appear like this. You will have the first bit of text and then task 3, and then you'll have the second bit of the text and task 4. It will always be from the same newspaper article, just a different section of it, okay? So maybe the start and the end or a bit in the middle. So task 3, you are recommended to spend 12 minutes on your response. You have to look at paragraphs 1 and 3 and explain how the writer has tried to gain and hold the interest of the reader, and it's worth 15 marks. Task 4, spend 12 minutes on your response. Final 4 paragraphs, explain how the writer has created a negative view of onesies. It's basically the same question they're asking you. They're looking for language devices, they're looking for how the person is entertaining or persuasive or whatever it is that their intended purpose is. Pay close attention to the title if it's given, because usually this gives away vital clues as to the opinion piece, and it's always going to be an opinion piece. Again, I'm not going to read through it, but you should be aware that you will not have time to really, in a detailed manner, annotate this. So you have to read through and highlight anything that leaps out at you. For example, it's not sleepwear, it's certainly not streetwear, and it's definitely not supposed to be worn by grown men. Instantly, that's entertaining from the get-go because you've got a short, emphatic statement of the writer's opinion. Then you've got incremental repetition, or even just repetition, where it's added to each time. So it's certainly not, definitely not, okay? This again emphasises the gravitas of their opinion, the weight of their opinion. It emphasises their negative view of onesies. Part pyjama, part Halloween costume, the onesie is rapidly becoming a wardrobe essential, blah, blah, blah. I am no fashion expert, but onesies come on. So you've got a rhetorical question, you've got ellipses, again creating this idea that the writer is in complete disbelief or shock at how ridiculous people are being, and you've got your imperative, come on. As you read your way through this, you'll notice that there's tons of other techniques, but I'm not going to go too into that because I have a repurposed mark scheme on the next couple of slides. Okay, so this was a past paper question a few years ago from the old specification, and I've literally just taken it and repurposed it, i.e. given you the kind of new format of this new GCSE that you're doing for the revision specification with CCEA. So let's have a look at the mark scheme, which again I just completely repurposed. It is not mine, I didn't make it, okay? So here you can see that they are hoping for 15 marks that you will get some of these points, and obviously you don't have to get all of them, and it's about the depth of your analysis and how accurately you can explain the intended impact or effect on the audience. Lively style of writing, lively informal style conveying the writer's disbelief at the onesie fashion craze, as shown through I am no fashion expert but onesies and call me a onesie cynic. Humour is frequently used to highlight and soften his negative views on onesies in a single act of desperation, an oversized baby grow. Exaggeration is also used to engage and amuse the reader. You could call that hyperbole or exaggeration, it's entirely up to you. Part pyjama, part Halloween costume. Avalanche of onesies has flooded a boiler suit or an oversized baby grow, so you've got more hyperbole there. You could talk about the metaphor of avalanche to emphasise how overwhelming this problem is and the fact that he deems it a problem. One thing I will say is that most people think you have to know things like simile, metaphor, personification. You can get a really good analysis by just saying the phrase X suggests Y, or even pinpointing something as basic as adjectives, which you can see further on down the mark scheme here. Direct address to maintain the reader's interest and include them in his strong opinions. No matter how much money you spend on a onesie, you're going to look like you're either wearing a boiler suit or, and then this creates a kind of conversational style, especially through that repeated direct address to the reader. Impact of particular words and phrases. There's the triple repetition of not at the beginning of the opening paragraph, immediately making clear the writer's negative stance on the question posed in the title. His view is emphatically reinforced through the use of adverbs, certainly and definitely, in the second and third sentences. And again, you can see certainly and definitely. It's not as if it's a really fancy technique that's difficult to come to grips with. It's an adverb, okay? So use of adverbs or adverbial phrases suggests blah, blah, blah is the kind of thing that you could say, and as long as you're justifying and explaining well enough, you'll get your marks. Informal language is used to draw in his readers, but onesies? Come on! Snapped up and snapped wearing them. There's descriptive language in the form of adjectives used to emphasise his opinion: odd, daft, valiant, and very tricky. Emphatic, negative, and humorous tone sustained throughout. Single act of desperation. Onesies are ridiculous. Humour in the form of similes engages the reader as well as developing the writer's opinion that onesies are ridiculous, like you're wearing a boiler suit or a baby grow. Then you have incredulity or disbelief and amusement with the onesie craze is also developed through the use of alliteration, cool clothing, fashion failure, colder climates. Plosive alliteration, part pyjama, part Halloween, emphasises his horror and disbelief. Imperative, call me a onesie cynic, endears the reader to him through his honest self-reflection and strong, unrestrained personal opinion. Celebrity examples or topical allusion emphasises where he places his anger for the rise in popularity of the onesie, stars like Justin Bieber and Rihanna. Then you have the effect created by different types of sentences. Neutral stance of the headline immediately followed by a series of short opening sentences that make his stance on onesies very clear. It's not, it's certainly not, and it's definitely not, by grown men. The strategic use of the short question and answer sentences at the end of the first paragraph highlight his scorn for the fashion item. But onesies? Come on! And throughout the remainder of the article, questions are used to direct his reader so that they have little choice but to agree with his emphatic view. What were fashion designers thinking? And then the feelings on the topic emphasised through frequent use of exclamation marks. Then the second part of the question, you also are recommended to have 12 minutes on, probably because they're both worth 15 marks, so split your time wisely. Don't focus more on task 3 than task 4. Divide your time evenly. And this time it's a negative view of onesies, so try to constantly pepper the keywords throughout, but remember that you're still hunting for the same techniques. Again, lively informal style conveys the writer's disbelief. What chance do the rest of us ordinary men have? Direct address and conversational style draws the reader in. If that's your thing, then by all means, go for it, as you can see. And he actually pleads at one point, perhaps for humorous effect, for the reader to consider his advice. Please, please, inside wear only. You can almost hear his frustration there. The writer's own personal preference formed the basis of the article. Giant baby grow, wouldn't wear them to my local supermarket. Details about the fashion trendsetters in onesies are used to prove it's virtually impossible to pull off the look. If male celebrities such as Brad Pitt can't pull off this look. Conversational style achieved through personal anecdote about his excursions to the local supermarket. Gangs of teenage girls dressed from head to toe, and the use of gangs makes them sound sinister and criminal for their fashion choices, creating a humorous image. And I suppose in his mind, he feels that they are criminals in terms of like this whole idea of the fashion police. Okay. Impact of particular words and phrases. You've got informal language to draw in his readers, a definite no-go area. If that's your thing, go for it, and snood thingies. Descriptive language in the form of adjectives used to emphasise his opinion, fat and foolish and strange. Emphatic, negative and humorous tone sustained throughout. Stop leaving the house in onesies. Flattering? Never. Culminating in the final paragraph, because onesies belong on babies. Humour in the form of similes, engaging the reader as well as developing the writer's opinion that onesies are ridiculous, like oversized babies. Incredulity or disbelief and amusement with the onesie craze developed through his use of alliteration, comfy and cute, wearer warm, recent reports, huge hit, fat and foolish. Metaphor in the concluding paragraph emphasises his desire for the swift end to the onesie, time in the spotlight, come to an end soon. Contrast between grown men and babies, or juxtaposition, emphasises the immaturity of anyone foolish enough to wear a onesie, and effect created by different sentence types, ellipses, dramatic pause before his forceful opinion, but onesies? Inside wear only. Throughout the remainder of the article, questions are used to direct his readers so that they have little choice but to agree. What chance do the rest of us ordinary men have? Short sentences show his frank and honest opinions or viewpoints. Flattering? Never. And the strength of his feelings on the topic emphasised through the frequent use of exclamation, never belong on babies, and emphatic final sentence, because onesies belong on babies. So it's really, really similar. You can see that it's practically the same thing that they're looking for. It's just different evidence. So when you first are faced with something like this in the exam, read the article. You probably won't have time in those 24 minutes to reread. So as you're reading, highlight things that stand out to you. Don't get too obsessed with really nitty-gritty annotation because you'll waste precious time, vital time. So highlight it, and then you'll be able to quickly locate the information that you feel is important so that you can come up with your PEE chains when you start writing and make the most of that time. And remember, split your time wisely.